You're the former state attorney general, and your name has been floated as a possible U.S. attorney general if Vice President Harris is elected. Is that a job that you'd be interested in?
I love being governor of this state. I love what we've been able to do. Free community college, better access to health care, making sure that we do things to move forward economically. I'm a pro-growth Democrat, as is Kamala Harris. We just cut taxes here in the state, which is also something that Kamala Harris wants to do. Cut taxes for the middle class. Donald Trump only wants to raise taxes for the ultra wealthy. So I'm focused, Nancy, on doing everything I can to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in November. It will be good, not just for Massachusetts, it will be good for America.
You signed a big maternal health bill in your state last week. It would expand insurance coverage for pregnant women, for women who are struggling with postpartum depression. President Trump announced this week that he wants to require insurance companies to cover IVF treatments. Is that something that you and parents in your states would welcome?
Well, first of all, don't believe anything that Donald Trump says. You know, as Attorney General, I had to sue him over 100 times for his lies. And as governor, I've seen the very real difference between a Trump administration and an administration that we'll have with Kamala Harris. When it comes to health, women's health, reproductive freedom, there can be no clear a difference in this election. Kamala Harris stands squarely for reproductive freedom. She supports women's access to health care. She knows the importance of giving women the freedom and the resources to protect care. Donald Trump, remember, is the architect of the undoing of Roe. He has said just the other day he's going to support the draconian abortion ban in Florida, the 6-week abortion ban. So, you know, I don't think Donald Trump can spell IVF, let alone understand what it means, because his own Project 2025, remember, which establishes a fetal personhood, would undermine and take away IVF treatment. In addition, Donald Trump is the person who tried to undo the Affordable Care Act time and time again. So don't believe Donald Trump when it comes to women's health, women's reproductive freedom, and Americans' access to health care. He doesn't believe in or support any of it. Kamala Harris does. She'll fight for it. She'll protect it.
But were you surprised to hear a Republican embracing what sounds like an insurance coverage mandate? Do you see that as a step in the right direction?
You can't take this seriously. I mean, this isn't just a Republican. This is, and by the way, I work well with Republicans. This is Donald Trump, who will say anything and everything depending on where the wind is blowing. He caught some heat the other day, you know, and so he comes out with this statement that all of a sudden he's a believer in IVF. It's just patently false. It's offensive. And I think, you know, what's important is that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are out there day after day on offense. I mean, they're touching rural areas, they're in red counties, they're in red states, they're all over. And they're not just talking to Democrats, Nancy. They're talking to Republicans, to independents, and to so many Americans who are just tuning in this Labor Day and haven't made up their mind about who they're going to vote for. And on issue after issue, protecting the middle class, a well-functioning economy, standing up for reproductive freedom, these are all things that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz believe in and will fight for, and things that Donald Trump and JD Vance don't know the first thing about and cannot deliver on.
Do you know somebody who's MAGA? Yep. And do they live in an alternate reality where they ignore all the red flags about Donald Trump that are blatantly right in front of their face? Uh-huh. And wouldn't it be nice to see what delusional things the Trump supporters actually see in Donald Trump? Yeah. Well, now you can. Introducing McGoggles. McGoggles? Yeah, McGoggles. They show you the world through a Trump supporter's eyes. For example, this is what we see, and this is what they see. Oh my God. I know, right? What we see, what they see. 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 Okay, but the last one's blank. Most of them are blank. They choose to ignore pretty much everything. They are so weird and crazy. What can we do? Oh, not much besides voting blue. These are just McGoggles, but now you know how delusional they are. What the fuck? McGoggles, seeing the world through a weird and crazy perspective.
Mental health is a serious problem that can affect anybody at any time. Caitlin Upton, a former Miss Teen, went through quite a few personal traumatic situations, specifically in relation to this picture which JD Vance was trying to use to make some dumb point that he posted on Thursday. He was asked if he'd like to comment or even apologise for being insensitive, and I'm quite surprised that this guy is just has no soul.
Night after CNN released a small clip of the Harris interview, you on Twitter posted a clip from a Miss Teen USA beauty pageant from 2007, Caitlin Upton, and you wrote, "I have gotten a hold of the full Kamala Harris CNN interview." Now, this thing that surfaced around the internet for a few years, she had, she struggled answering a question back in this beauty pageant. I'm not sure you're aware, in 2015, Caitlin Upton did an interview with New York Magazine about all the social media attention this clip got, and she said, "I definitely went through a period where I was very, very depressed, but I never let anybody see that stuff except for people I could trust. I had some very dark moments where I thought about committing suicide." So when you posted this last night, were you aware that the woman you were posting a picture of had contemplated committing suicide for the attention it received?
No, certainly not, John, and my heart goes out to her, and I hope that she's doing well. Look, I've said a lot of things on camera. I've said a lot of stupid things on camera. Sometimes when you're in the public eye, you make mistakes, and again, I think the best way to deal with it is to laugh at ourselves, laugh at this stuff, and try to have some fun in politics. I posted a meme from 20 years ago, and I think the fact that we're talking about that instead of the fact that American families can't afford groceries or health care, young families can't afford to buy a home to raise their families in, those are the real crises that we should focus on. And there's nothing that says that we can't tell some jokes along the way while we deal with the very serious business of bringing back our public policy. Politics has gotten way too lame, John, way too boring. You can have some fun while making a good argument to the American people about how you're going to improve their lives.
Okay, I just want to be clear, though. You said you didn't know. Would you like to apologize to Caitlin Upton for posting that last night, given what you've now learned?
John, I'm not going to apologize for posting a joke, but I wish the best for Caitlin. I hope that she's doing well. And again, what I'd say is one bad moment shouldn't define anybody, and the best way to deal with this stuff is to laugh at ourselves.
Last night, Vice President Harris.
What I find just incredible is that JD Vance is meant to be the best the Republican Party can come up with. Seriously, this is somebody that could become a vice president and potentially, if anything happens, the former guy take over as president. He is just not in touch anywhere. Doesn't like women. I actually think JD Vance would struggle being in that administration that was running Germany in the mid-30s. It's just a total colossal calamity. A walking, talking disaster. Trump has changed his position again, by the way. He's pro-choice. I don't know where he is today. Obviously deciding where the votes are. JD Vance doesn't have a mind of his own. Really doesn't. Dodges the questions, and this is actually pathetic. There was no other description, and it's on CNN. It's not exactly like he's on a channel that's going to push him to answer the question. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. I appreciate within the MAGA world, they probably think it's great. Owning the libs or whatever they call it. Doesn't matter that the guy's clueless. Do they really think that suddenly, when a decision comes right down and affects them directly, because they love JD Vance, it's going to make a difference? I think JD Vance would treat even a brick wall badly. In fact, I'd actually, if you wanted to bet between a brick wall having more intelligence and common sense and articulation and being more worldly and knowledgeable, put your money on the brick wall.
The circle of life eventually closes on all things. For Impetus Americanus, the time for prowling will soon be at an end. It was to be his final hunt. His prey, older, weaker, unable to fight back. The best kind, or so he thought. But Impetus Americanus made a mistake. He is slow, he is lost. His imagined strengths are but weaknesses. And he's alone. His mate, his cubs, already eyeing new, greener lands. His pack is flimsy and overmatched. His lieutenants are weak and timid. The decades creak in his bones. The humiliations fester in every fold of soft, bloated skin. And as he rambles and wanders among the fields, no longer on the trail, he reeks of fear. He's afraid of the conflict, of what comes next. He starts to realize it is not his last hunt. Impetus Americanus is the hunted. He is the prey. The apex predator is approaching, preparing to devour him. It is Mother Nature's design that the circle of life eventually closes on all things. For Impetus Americanus, that's...
Yeah, right from the beginning, as soon as we heard about it, it's fertilization and it's helping women and men and families. We are going to be, under the Trump administration, we are going to be paying for that treatment. So we are paying for that treatment.
All Americans who want it?
For all Americans that get it, all Americans that need it. So we're going to be paying for that treatment, or we're going to be mandating that the insurance company pay.
So either the government will pay for it or the insurance companies will cover.
Under a mandate, yes.
Senator, you can't say this, but I will. Donald Trump's just talking out of his behind on this issue because he knows he's getting his behind whipped on this issue. So now he's tacking to a position that he thinks is going to be helpful on IVF. He got caught again on the 6 weeks ban in his home state of Florida, and now he's against something that we know he's for. Let me just set the record again. Donald Trump has always been pro-choice Republicans, all right? Stop pretending. Senator, how do you see this narrative now shifting or reshifting in this debate as Donald Trump is trying to take a new position to claim he's now supporting women in their bodily rights and choices?
So Donald Trump is dithering, and he's dithering because he is shocked to discover that we can actually hear him when he talks to other people.
I'm sorry.
No, Senator, we're sorry to laugh, but you are correct.
But that's so true.
So when he thinks he's talking to his radical base, he says, how radical do you need for me to be? And Donald Trump will go there and go further. But when he's talking to the overwhelming majority of Americans who very much oppose that radical approach to abortion and IVF, he tries to change his tune and then is shocked when each side now is starting to call him out on that. And I think that this is what the vice president meant by not a serious man. There's no principle here for him other than, does it help Donald Trump? That is his single guiding principle. And American women are just flat calling him out on that and saying, we are not going to trust Donald Trump. He wants to turn around and say he's going to support IVF. Are you kidding me? He also supports, and it's also there in his platform, that IVF will effectively be banned all across the United States. Sorry, Donald, can't have it both ways.
You know, Senator, to your point, it even feels as though that his own running mate, JD Vance, needed to clean up what Donald Trump said on IVF the next morning. Here's what he had to say to CNN the next morning about Donald Trump's proposal on paying for IVF.
All details get worked out in the legislative process, and we're not in the legislative process because we haven't won yet. But I think that President Trump, again, just believes that we wanted women to have access to these fertility treatments. We're not going to force anybody to do something that is against their conscience, but we also want to make this fertility stuff available to as many people as possible.
It seems as though they want to have it many ways at one time, and this people, they're on the record with not just various other statements, but we have seen what Donald Trump and, frankly, JD Vance have done.
Mm-hmm. You know, on this one in particular, let's be clear. The radical Republicans are pushing a fetal personhood bill. And it is now a majority of Republicans in the House of Representatives, including the Speaker of the House. And the consequence of that bill would shut down IVF everywhere in America. Red states, blue states, purple states makes no difference, because any efforts at IVF, the way IVF is done, would, according to the radical Republicans, result in murder. So there are no clinics, there are no doctors, there's no one who's going to help a family that needs IVF in order to expand their families. So that's where they are. They're on record with this. It's also in the Republican platform, and it is entirely consistent with the radical views on abortion. Remember, the Democrats in the Senate put forward a bill that said, you know, why don't we just end this controversy? And at least here in the Senate, we'll put a bill out, we'll vote on it, that just says we're going to protect access to IVF all across the country. Just that, nothing more. How did JD Vance vote on that? No. He voted against it. And 4 weeks later, Donald Trump picked JD Vance to be his running mate. So these guys don't get to stand up and say with any credibility, oh yeah, we really want to help families have access to IVF, except for the fact that we want to ban it nationally, and we will not support any laws to protect it.
Senator, I want to broaden the lens out a little bit wider and talk about these issues, IVF, abortion, choices that are made by women and in many cases by families. And sticking with JD Vance because he offers so many targets to go after. In his race for the U.S. Senate in 2021, he was at the Center for Christian Value Leadership Forum attacking Randi Weingartner, who is the head of the American Federation of Teachers. She is a married lesbian and has what she calls a mother. She's a mother by marriage to 2 daughters. This is how Vance talked about her family, about Weingartner's family, because that's the context in which this issue was brought up. Let's take a listen.
So many of the leaders of the left, and I hate to be so personal about this, but they're people without kids trying to brainwash the minds of our children. And that really disorients me and it really disturbs me. Randi Weingarten, who's the head of the most powerful teachers union in the country, she doesn't have a single child. If she wants to brainwash and destroy the minds of children, she should have some.
This is a plea. I don't know how it's going to work out, but it is a plea. Do you know anybody who is female and is a ardent Republican? And if you do me a favor, send them this clip and get them to leave a comment, because I don't understand how anybody who, never mind just being female, would go along with some of the stuff that JD Vance has come out with. He's come out against single women. Yeah? He's come out against women who work. Seriously. He wants to control women's right to contraception, to stop abortions. Just, there is a whole list of things that JD Vance, and this is not somebody else, this is what JD Vance, he's probably a misogynist, that's the best way of describing it, yet there are people who still feel that he is somebody that could be vice president, and potentially, if anything happens to the former guy, if that former guy wins, and then something happens, could take over. How is it that somebody has reached such a, should we say, I don't know if you call it a high office if you're the Republican nominee, but he's in that position, but has zero respect for just the average normality of women. And he has daughters as well. There has to be something I'm missing. So even if you're not a Republican, in the comment section, can you just explain it to me? Because I'm on the outside watching and thinking, this is crazy. Just crazy. I'm sure you can speak to people who are ardent conservative people. He started a whole IVF conversation. And just, what was he saying about teachers? If something like, if you're a single woman, you don't make for a good teacher. This is just real nastiness. And the problem we have here is, if that's the acceptable language from people in public in high office, it scares me what is said in private, when no one's around listening. And it probably explains why, in my mind, there are certain people who go on social media encouraged by Elon Musk and co, who are just right now thinking, well, JD Vance can say that sort of stuff. I can say even worse. I would put it down to, I thought we were doing a level of, I always thought, if you do, talk to anyone who does political studies or something important, who says at a rally the S word when talking about a, your political opponent?
A lot of what people remember about JD Vance is that kind of comment. We just heard it. And I should say, to be fair, he's not alone in that. Both Tom Cotton and Marjorie Taylor Greene have said similar things, including that you have someone who's a stepmom as a head of the teachers union, not a biological mother. Does that resonate more? Does that hurt their pitch to American families?
Chris, I just think it's a very bad look from the vice presidential pick to say something that echoes a situation that plenty of women across the country and the men that love them can relate to. Pretty much everyone has a woman in their life who has chosen to remain childless for reasons that are her own personal reasons, and families love those women, and so it's hit something